So we live in a world where we're exposed all the time to synthetic chemicals. And we don't even think about the effect those synthetic chemicals are having on our body. A world that creates obesity because of the sitting, because of the free access to food, because of all the mechanical forms of transport. We live in, and nobody talks about this as well, the increasing exposure to radiation. People constantly have these mobile phones against their skull, and I can assure you there is a direct link between the excessive use of mobile phones and brain tumours. The World Health Organization, which is a reasonably well-respected group of people, put out a statement a few years back saying that mobile phone use is what we call a type 2B carcinogen, which means the evidence is pretty strong that if you use a mobile phone without protection, and I'm not suggesting wearing a condom, I'm talking a mobile phone to the ear for a half an hour a day for 10 years in a row, you increase your risk for the worst form of brain tumour, malignant glioma, by 30%. Now, and I will declare my interest in this, I'm part of a company that makes a thing called a SpeakSafe, which is a little very inexpensive device you put around the cord going into your ear, and it blocks 99.9% of the radiation. And I would certainly not have a prolonged conversation on a phone without using my SpeakSafe. If you use the earpieces, it actually concentrates the radiation into the ear unless you've got the SpeakSafe. And those ridiculous Bluetooth things, unbelievably bad for you. So we've got to think about, and you wouldn't believe this one, ladies and gentlemen. There are people who sleep with a television in their bedroom. Could you imagine how bad that is for your body? The radiation coming off the TV, even if it's switched off. Even I think the effects of Wi-Fi in the home and what they're doing to our body. So the radiation's not good either. Also, our life is chronically stressful. It's the chronic stresses of complex relationships, very complex jobs, very complex travel. We're not just top of the food chain hunter-gatherers anymore. But because we don't live in that harsh environment, we are living double our use-by date, which is age 40. And I can say that with absolute conviction that our use-by date is age 40, because if you look at, say, for example, sportsmen, all sportsmen are at the peak of their career up to their 30s, and then they're not as good after the age of 30 because the body's starting to wear out. So we have to have tricks to overcome all this, which I'm trying to talk to you about. Now, one of the things we keep doing, what we do is because we have 5 basic drives. We have these 5 that you see here. The need for food, because if you don't eat food, you die. Need for good shelter, because there are times when the elements will kill us. Social interaction. The wonderful thing that comes from social interaction, because if we don't do this, we don't procreate the species. And of course, the acquisition of knowledge. But here's the problem. No longer do we eat just to fill our bellies. Food has become one of our major life pleasures. And also, the bigger the shelter, the more important you are. That's how many people think. So we don't just live in a cave to get out of the rain. We now have to have very nice shelters. And then there's, of course, social interaction and that activity that leads from social interaction. And then the need for knowledge you see in the animal self-help section here. Now, here's a question for you, and I'll put this question out to the audience. Who are the sickest race on the planet? Americans? Why do people pick on the Americans? New Zealanders, no. The sickest people on the planet live in Africa. Their average lifespan of people who live in the middle bits of Africa is about 30 to 40. Why? Because they're malnourished. It doesn't hurt to have a little bit of this. It hurts to be malnourished. The worst thing for you. And here's the key to a lot of my work. I'll just show you this here. This is a blood vessel with protein, sugar, and fat coming through the blood vessels, and they've got to get into the things below the cells to do their stuff. So the covering of every cell in a healthy person living in the modern society is 75% fat. So fat isn't the evil that we've been told it is. If you don't have a good fatty membrane, toxins can easily get into your cell and kill the cell. So in Africa, because a lot of them are malnourished, they don't have enough fat to act as a protective coating in their cells, and HIV, tuberculosis, malaria, now there's Zika virus in South America, straight into the cells, kill the cells very easily and cause damage. and then can damage the nucleus or just kill the cell. In our society, the fat that's bad, there's only one fat that's bad. It's not saturated fat. I'll talk about that in a second. It is what we call trans fats, which are the synthetic fats in processed packaged food, which basically get into your cell membranes and do what they do to food. We use trans fats to thicken and harden food, and the trans fats in our body thicken and harden the membranes, so the membranes become very hard, very brittle, and can break down very easily. So it's trans fats that are bad that you get in processed packaged muck masquerading as food.